And welcome to episode what number are we, Mike?
168.
168 of Spy Curios on this glorious Friday. I'm so happy the weather is warming up. Today I will be talking about the hot topic of the week, and that is the Optus leak. And Mike?
I'm going to be talking about procedural fairness and natural justice.
And of course, I'll be discussing how you can make sure you're protected when it comes to your identity online and possibly in the Optus leak.
And I am going to be looking at what happened to AIRLAP in our monthly meetings. I cancelled them. That's it. And all that news and all that information is coming up in the next 30 minutes with Casey Pine. Who we got saying hello? We've got someone saying hello. G'day. We can't see your name, but great to see you. Thanks for watching. All right, people, you're at... G'day, Jamie. How you going, mate? Did have it there. He's down in Ballarat, which I'm sure they enjoyed it down there. The Geelong won the grand final at Ballarat. I'm sure there's lots of Geelong supporters down there, mate. So great to see you, Jamie. Hi, everyone. This is the weekly news program for people that get excited about investigations. And it doesn't get more exciting about investigations than what happened on LinkedIn at MJM this week. So MJM put up this case study of how a person on workers' compensation was running their own business as well as collecting workers' compensation benefits. So the rule with workers' compensation, people, is if you can't work in one workplace and you're getting paid 80% of your weekly wage from that workplace to not work because you're recovering and being rehabilitated, you can't work anywhere else. Now, this person was running their own photography business. They were also running their own dog breeding business, and they're also going on camping trips. And this was all found out by a desktop investigation done by MJM. So that person now has got some explaining to do to WorkSafe, because basically what they've done is they've confessed to having another job when they don't have the ability to work. What's the consequences of that? Is that parade their head around on a stick and go to jail, go directly to jail? Well, it could be if it was big enough, but usually it's they're going to have to pay back the money and they're going to have to pay for the investigation, and WorkCover are going to confront them with a letter to explain what they were doing to make sure there's no mistake about it. But if with workers' compensation, if you can't work in one industry, you can't work in any other as well. Good job down there at MJM with that case study. You can see that on LinkedIn. Just type in MJM for a search on LinkedIn and you'll see that there. So another thing that's happened this week, interesting stuff on LinkedIn this week, has been the Association of Certified Fraud Investigators have put up a diagram explaining how perpetrators conceal their frauds. So this has been posted by Wayne, who is the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. So this is on LinkedIn. Anyone can see it. So if you jump on LinkedIn and type in a bit of a search there for the Association of Workplace Investigators, you can see how people conceal their frauds. An interesting thing in that diagram, I think 17%, or just a little bit lower than that, don't conceal the fraud at all, which sounds like a bit of a cry for help, that one. So that's on LinkedIn this week. This is really important for all investigators. This man here, pictured in Cairns, his name is Ginny Blee. He's a yacht sort of person. He has been charged with murder this week. So what's happened is he's imported some drugs from South America that were dropped off on a ship in New South Wales. And what happened was there was a diver went down to collect these drugs underwater. And while that diver was down there, he drowned. So the person who imported the drugs and instructed the diver to go down there and get them is this guy. He's in jail at Grafton Jail, and he's been visited by the police this week and charged with murder. So it was his drugs. He sent the diver down there to do it, and basically that's what's happened. So he's taken a very big risk to get rich quick. If you ever want to import drugs, find yourself a fishing boat or a yacht, it's how the most drugs are going to come into the country. Always has been. Never really changed. You watch all the stuff about what goes into the ports and into the containers and all that. So it's very high risk stuff. So if you can convince a fisherman to do it for you, save a lot of money that way. So it's not untypical, and that's what happens with drug importation. Other news this week. I've just got to make sure I've covered all my newses. Yeah, I've covered all my newses. Just some quick jobs. General insurance manager is wanted at Brookside. So Darren Maynard has left Brookside. He's gone on to other things after 3 or 4 years at Brookside, and they're looking for a case manager for general insurance. So jump on our Facebook page and you can see that job there. Tasmanian Aboriginal Centre down in Tasmania, they're looking for an investigator down there for their disability and support services in aged care and healthcare, that sort of thing. Vendor management, they want to pay you $85,000 a year to work from home on your desktop, not have to commute into the office. Right? In your first year, they want to pay you $85,000. All right. So if you're a licensed investigator in New South Wales, they want to do that for you. But like I said last week, if you're a licensed investigator in Queensland and you go and get yourself a New South Wales license, you could get this job with vendor management because you're a New South Wales license, and this is required for New South Wales, those investigations. So keep that in mind. That's the handy thing about having 2 licenses in those circumstances. Wise Workplace in Sydney are looking for investigators in the ACT in New South Wales. The Victorian Building Authority, who do we know from the Victorian Building Authority named George? I don't know. They're looking for investigations managers down there, and they'd like you to have a diploma of government investigation. Crown Melbourne are looking for a senior investigator in their internal investigator down in Melbourne. So that's an internal job. It's not an external job. So really great opportunity with Crown Melbourne. You will be working very hard. They do a lot of investigations regarding switching of chips and grabbing other people's chips that you didn't put down, and slip, strips and falls, and people who are banned from casinos, money laundering, all that sort of thing. You're going to be right in the thick of it with that kind of job at Crown in Melbourne. One thing that came up this week, and as a result of this, we've entered into something. You turn away if you're easily upset. Dog cruelty in Brisbane. This dog was tied up and it had cuts in it and had writing all over it. It was left to die, tied up in the bush. Fortunately, they found it. The RSPCA rescued it. That's enough of that. So basically, that's happened this week. There was another one the week before. Dog was tied up, cruelly treated and left in the bush. It died. We support the RSPCA at the Australian Security Academy, and we're about to enter into another training program with the RSPCA in Queensland, which will take us up to $1 million of in-kind support for the RSPCA around Australia. And I'm quite pleased about that. And you're going to actually see some RSPCA people come on this program. So we're looking forward to seeing that. I think they do a great job in difficult, emotional circumstances at the RSPCA. As a result of that too, I told you last week, Casey's coming, she's going to get a turn in a minute, but I told you last week, if you work in Certificate for a Government Investigation, you are basically enforcing compliance. And I described it as your mother used to do it to you. She used to make you eat your vegetables. And you didn't like it and you didn't want to eat your vegetables, but you had to. So this is what government investigators do. They enforce regulatory compliance with people to pay their tax, with people to pay parking fines and park appropriately, with people to not steal water out of rivers, with people not to poison the rivers and factories not to poison the rivers. And that's what compliance enforcement officers stop with the EPA and things like that. So the concept I introduced you to last week, the first part of the concept that you must understand if you're going to be a government investigator is you're making people eat their vegetables. They don't want to eat their vegetables, but it's good for them. And if they don't, you're going to fine them. And if they don't do it after that, you're going to find them a bigger fine. And it just keeps escalating like that. How do you explain this? How do you actually explain this to people? This is the way they do it. The compliance officer from WorkSafe or from the MAIB in Tasmania or the Transport Accident Commission in Victoria comes into your workplace and says, this is the line. You are non-compliant. You're on this side of the line. You don't want to be there. You've got to come over to this right side of the line. That's the good side, where you comply. So, in order to comply, you must have a workplace health and safety policy. You must have ventilation. You must have a standard operating procedure for this. You must fill out your SWIMS forms. Whatever it is, they will list it. So you're on this side of the line, which is wrong. You've got to get back over this side of the line, which is right. Eat your vegetables and everything's going to be fine. Now, 98% of people will get that. Doesn't matter what their culture is, what their background is, where they're from, where they grew up, 98% of people will get that. 2% of idiots will kick up about it and give you a hard time. Now, you imagine being that RSPCA officer that's got to go and retrieve that cruelly treated cat or dog from that residence. They're saying, this is the line, we're going to help you to comply, you know, water it, feed it, whatever. Okay, I've asked you to do that, now we're taking it off you. And then they're going to go, give me back my fucking cat. And they're going to get ugly with you.
Beep.
This is what happens. So they deal with this. These are people who are only doing their job, right? They're not superhuman. They're now in a dangerous situation with a big 10-foot tall, ugly person who hasn't had a wash in 3 weeks, screaming at them and getting physical. Next week on this program, we're going to go through self-defense techniques to protect yourself in those sort of situations. So don't miss that. If you're a regulatory compliance officer, yeah, come on in and watch it next week. So that's coming up next week. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And we do that for the RSPCA and our training with the RSPCA. And I reckon they'll be here watching it next week as well. Casey, tell us all about what you've got this week.
Absolutely. I thought I would talk a bit about the Optus hack because, as usual with the news, like a lot of it's blown up, and I watched a fair amount of breakfast television and different news programs and stuff to get prepared for this because I don't generally watch them. And now I feel like my brain hurts because of the reporting. So if you don't know, Optus has come forward this week and said that close to 10 million of its customers' information has been released. And that includes obviously names and addresses, their Medicare cards, their licenses, and their passports. So it's not a small leak. It is a huge leak with almost 10 million, like this half our population being affected. It's huge. It's very big, and Optus at the moment it's all panic stations at Optus right now, I'm sure. So I've seen a number of different people go on the news and say, well, this has happened and Optus aren't replying and Optus aren't doing this and Optus aren't doing that. And I thought I might shed a little bit of light from a cybersecurity, a neutral kind of position that you can take and implement if you are an Optus customer. So people are saying that they're not receiving emails, they're not receiving texts, like they should have just sent out like a blanket thing. And because this has hit the news, we have to keep in mind that scammers take advantage of scams. So if you get a text from Optus and it says, click here, put in your personal information and your credit card number, and we'll make all this to go away for you, it's probably a scam. So Optus are trying to take care of this in a very painfully slow manner because they are ill-equipped, and it's not just Optus. Many Australian companies, many companies around the world are ill-equipped to deal with this kind of hack. And aside from it being an amazing hack, that how they even got in there, how they did it, people are saying that because Apparently, the hacker released 10,000 people's information online and then took it off and issued an apology. People are saying, oh, maybe it's a child, maybe it's a delinquent that his parents found out that that's what he did, and they said take it down and say sorry, and hopefully it all goes away. But oftentimes these things are usually organized crime, or it can be a kid, absolutely. And the fact that it was taken down and an apology issued is quite strange, but the likelihood of the hacker being caught is quite small, and the likelihood of them anyone ever seeing any justice around this is quite small as well. So when I deal with hacking and things like that, it's often quite easily traceable, and I'll trace it to an overseas organized crime gang or just an overseas location, and I hand that information over to the police, and nothing's ever done about it, because they'd have to send a police officer over there to get back your $200,000, which is would cost a police officer, taxpayers' money, everything like that. So the moral of the story with that is don't get hacked. But how can you not be hacked when multi-billion-dollar organizations are hacked? So let's have a look at that. How can you protect yourself in a really basic way? And I talk about this all the time, and I'm actually quite frustrated at my own husband who doesn't take my advice on this. And the number one piece of advice I always give is get a password manager. Never have the same password, because the likelihood of a password being attached to that data leak, say you use the password, say you set up an internet banking PIN or a phone banking PIN, and it's the same as the PIN that you use for your credit card across all your credit cards. Never ever reuse PINs or passwords. Get a password manager so it's all in one place. So if something is revealed, like that PIN, it's just attached to that card. It's not going to be attached to other cards because they're completely different. If you have a password that you can remember, it's not strong enough. You need a password manager. And it's funny because I was discussing this with my sister-in-law the other day, and she said, well, what if the password manager website is hacked? And that is absolutely 100% one of a worry that can happen. But these guys are, aside from the fact that this is their business and this is cybersecurity is one of the biggest things that they understand and they're doing, then they invest lots and lots of money into protecting themselves, because if they get hacked, then that is a world of trouble for them and password managers. So you kind of have to trust, I know, that they are doing the right thing to protect your information. Or you can easily, for example, with Bitwarden, you can download the software and self-host it yourself. So you download it and you store it on your computer. It's not attached to the internet or to them directly. So you self-host it. You've got it on your computer. You can just store it on a little hard drive, just like an external hard drive or something like that, and put it on to the side like I do. And that way it's not connected to the internet and you can't be hacked. So these are the kind of things that we have to take personal responsibility for. So when big hacks like this happen, obviously we have a little bit of protection in place. So if you were part of the Optus hack and you had, they have let you know, they are offering, the government are offering, some states I believe are offering that you can get a new Medicare card, a new license, and a new passport, because these are the really important numbers that tie our identity to us. So I've had my license, actually have it here. I keep all my old ones, I've got my license here. I've had it since the same license since I was 17. It's been the same number. It's tied to my identity. There's a massive footprint of me getting phone numbers and rental agreements to buying houses and credit cards. All that jazz is attached to that number, and that's how people can use that number to also get loans out, to get credit cards, to steal your identity and use it against you. And then that is a massive mess. So if you are a part of this, I would suggest that you do take them up on this offer and change your number, get your Medicare number changed, get your license number changed, get that new passport, because I know it's a thing that's going to happen and it's going to take you time and it's a pain. But if you speak to anyone who has had their identity stolen, that is a much bigger pain. This is like years of being embroiled in trying to untangle yourself from this mess. If you, for example, I spoke to a lady who had her identity stolen. Not only did they start up new super accounts, they got a loan out in her name, credit cards in her name. They also used Afterpay for a number of things and a number of different Afterpay companies. And lots of them, she didn't even know that they were there until years later, well, a couple of years later, she was trying to get a credit card herself, and she had a bad credit rating from this obscure Afterpay type company that she'd never heard of that was part of the identity theft. So just constantly trying to unpick and figure out where, because it's not like all of a sudden everything comes up and it's like, oh, they use this and they use this. Maybe they used a bank that you don't know. Maybe they use a service you don't know of or even know exists, like this lady. So take the time, get that new passport, get that new Medicare number, get that new license. So yeah, that's the moral of the story. Use a password manager.
Very good advice, Casey. Thanks for the in-depth look at that. So, all right, we're all got to get a password manager. We've got to change our PIN numbers and we'll never be able to access our bank accounts again ourselves.
Use a password manager.
Great advice, Casey. Really well done. And I'm sure those scams are coming out right now. But if you want to avoid all that, just text me your bank account number and your BSB and I'll sort it all out for you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's really easy. In the AFL last week, last week's program has got the most watches we've ever had for a Spy Curious in our series. We had some AFL people accused, some coaches accused of racism at the Hawthorn Football Club. I told you about Chris. Chris is the coach of Brisbane currently, and he's had accusations made against him at Hawthorn when he was coaching there. It was all news to him. He didn't know about it because the ABC reported it, and suddenly Chris is there reading about this on the internet. And fortunately for him, he's got lawyers this week. He's engaged lawyers to protect himself because earlier in the week he was saying, I'll do the right thing and I'll cooperate and I'll do all this sort of stuff. And being the nice bloke Chris Fagan is, he was sort of like setting himself up for failure. But now he's legally represented in the matter. So what's happened is these accusations have been made as part of an internal review ordered by the Hawthorn Football Club into their practices of what went on there. So when you get this sort of thing, what you've got to do is you've got to front up to some kind of tribunal that's organised for it and answer to them in relation to it if you want to keep your job, if you want to save your reputation. Now, in Chris's case, he knew nothing about this, and basically it was a big surprise. And you won't meet a person who's more dedicated to his role and to his team and his sport. So the issue comes out about this is it's between, there's a timeline of this approximately between 2005 and 2016 where this could have happened. So what's the issue with natural justice? The accused person should know the nature of the accusation, know and understand. Well, the two accused people here read it on the internet. That was their first understanding of it. They have a right to privacy. Well, they weren't given a right to privacy. The investigation can't be done on suspicion, advocacy, or fishing expedition. That's never going to work. And all those things are why that investigation happened and how it happened. So the person doing the investigating was advocating for the people who were complaining. It must be dealt with by legislation and a policy in place. So the Football League will have a legislation, policy, code of conduct, all that sort of thing. And the accused person should be given opportunity to state their case in response to the accusations. Tribunals, hearings and similar are not bound by the rules of evidence. You can say anything. to the tribunal. And it doesn't have to be supported by an email, a document, a recording, a video. You just say what you like and spill your guts and be really vague and ambiguous about it. And the tribunal's got to act without bias. These guys are screwed. Absolutely screwed. It's just really difficult. Natural justice and procedural fairness is the right to be given a fair hearing, the opportunity to present one's case, the right to have a decision made by an unbiased decision maker, and the right to have that decision based on an objective evidence. Here you've got a couple of 18 and 19-year-olds giving evidence from 2008 to 2016, and they've mixed up their relationship and all the emotions of it with the person's job. So it's a really difficult one, and there's 3 families involved in relation to it. With natural justice, the purpose today is to demonstrate an understanding of maintaining records. Your protection in these kind of things is 3 things: procedural fairness, natural justice, and consistency in how you go about your work as an investigator. Because if people complain about you and you can demonstrate, well, I always do it the same way to the same people. I don't see in colour. I don't see in sex. I don't see in age. I just interview the people who are in front of me and ask them what happened. All right. So you must be consistent with that if you're an investigator, because an investigator, when someone gets a negative outcome, they're going to complain about you. Now here, in this case, we're talking about football, and the careers have all finished and gone, and they're over, but they're coming back and complaining about something that happened years ago. Are there records of it? You must be able to demonstrate a knowledge of the 3 broad principles that underpin the rules for natural justice. Justice must not only be done, it must seem to be done. And everybody's laughing about that because quite often that never happens. Any of these records could be a central issue when the decision is challenged. So there's a right, including liberty. They can't lock you up and call you guilty beforehand. There must be some kind of interest. Now, the interest was employment in this case as a footballer, professional footballer. Now, they're not getting paid $150 a week. Who knows? They're accepting a lot of money to be a professional footballer, and there'd be some kind of performance contract. And there's going to be a legitimate expectation of a benefit. So what's a benefit of this? Is it revenge against the Hawthorn Football Club? Is it expectation of the curative effect of a really big payout as a result of leaking it to the ABC and having people guilty before they even had a chance to see it themselves? The accused person must know the nature of the accusation. The accused person should be given the opportunity to state their case in response to the accusation, and the tribunal must act without bias. So it's really difficult situation. You've got emotional relationships in this. 18, 19-year-olds playing professional football, often overwhelmed by it all. Here's a little tip about professional football. You think all the footballers are teammates and they like each other and they get on. Now, what happens is the coach goes, "Oh, I'd like to introduce you to Harry. Harry's just kicked 365 goals in the Ovens League competition last year. He's 17 years old. He's super fit. He's lightning quick. And we think he's going to be the best player that ever came to this club." And everybody gives him a little clap at training. And then they go out and go through, run a couple of laps, and then they start doing their drills. And when they do the drills in pairs, the older players who are a little bit slower, they want to keep their $100,000 a year contract. They don't want Harry replacing them. So what happens is Harry gets like a welcome to prison bashing in the football training, but it's not obvious because you can't have the coach seeing it. So when they have the competitive drills, Harry will suddenly get the biggest whack in the side of the ear before he even touches the football at training for the first time. That's just to let him know, welcome to the big league, Harry. Now, if Harry's a snowflake and he can't take it, that's going to be pretty obvious when he goes up to the coach and goes, "Oh, Coach Dermott, that's going to cause all sorts of problems." So they dish it out. You think they're teammates. No, they're not. They're there for themselves and their income. And they let everybody know that. So don't sucker for what you think, right? Be loyal to your team, but that's how they act. I promised to tell you about AIRLAP. What happened to it? We're supposed to have a meeting every month, and for the last 2 months, we haven't had one. I've cancelled those monthly meetings. We're now incorporating them in this program. Every Friday, we're going to have a weekly meeting now. If you have something to raise as part of your industry association, get in touch with me. Okay, let me know on the email. Give me a call on the phone. Just let me know. I'd like to be on the program for the AIRLAP section. And Casey and I are going to devote 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever's relevant, to the issue that comes up. Now, whether the issue is licensing or you haven't been paid or whatever it might be workplace health and safety. It might be you're going to your first football training next week and you're a bit worried. Whatever your issue is, and you can appear on AIRLAP with Casey and I. All right, so we'll be here and we're going to incorporate it into this. Why have I done that? It's been outrageously successful. I can't deal with it. I can't get the relevant guest speakers on because they work in an industry where they commit to a time and then something urgent comes up, and everything we do as investigators has got a minimum of 14 days, mostly 24 hours or 48 hours to be dealt with. Urgent things come up all the time and they cancel on me. And it's only reason they cancel on me is they're good at what they do. So they're in demand and they're professional speakers. I can't book them for it. It's an impossibility that I've learned over the last 10 months, which is kind of weird. And people, hang on, we go to the lunches and the breakfasts and they have their guests, but yeah, they do. All right. Okay. And sometimes they cancel. With us in a digital format, that's happens as well. And we were doing it for a monthly meeting. Now we're doing it for a weekly meeting. Some weeks I'm going to say here, all right, people, this is meeting of AIRLAP in episode number 169 of Spy Curios. There's nothing on the agenda this week. See you next week. That'll happen. Okay, bit disappointing, but you've always got the opportunity to raise it and it's going to be incorporated into this. It's been outrageously successful. The students who graduate and enroll love it. They really like being a member. And they emphasise that to me. Oh, free membership of an industry association. That'll be handy. If ever a client says to me, you've got to be a member of an industry association, I am already. Doesn't cost me $600 a month. Now, it's no use having an industry association without an issue. And next week, I'm going to introduce you to our next issue. The issue that started us was licensing in New South Wales and the provisional licence. In our first AIRLAP meeting, we corrected that. Well done, AIRLAP members. That was really good. You saw that, Casey. You were there.
Yep, that was brilliant, and it happened very swiftly.
Next week, I'm going to introduce you to the concept where we are going to say to licensing authorities and government departments, we're going to say to them, there's over 6,000 people in Australia who are doing investigations that aren't licensed. Why are you letting them do that? This is who they are. And casual Friday. This is who they are. All right. There's a lot of them. They're unqualified. And they're doing investigations on behalf of insurance companies. Why do we have to be licensed and they don't? Which way do you want it? Let's all have no license, or let's get them licensed. And you might end up saving a lot of money renewing your license if they say, all right, nobody's going to have a license. Or they might make them become licensed. I'm going to spell that out to you next Friday. Is it starting trouble? No. It's levelling the playing field. That's how it goes. So if you're paying in Victoria $700 every 3 years to be licensed, why do these people over there, they don't have to? You're behind the 8 ball. So we're going to be bringing that up as the Academy of Investigation, Risk and Loss Adjusting Professionals and taking it to the government and taking it to the licensing authorities. I didn't think we'd have a snowflake's hope in hell with the New South Wales licensing provisional licence. They caved in a week. This is going to be really interesting, and I'm looking forward to doing that one next week as part of what we do. Is there anything we've missed, Casey?
Nope. I actually just wanted to say one thing about the Optus data breach is that the particularly vulnerable people at the moment are the elderly. So if you have elderly people in your life, maybe a neighbour, your parents, aunties and uncles, speak to them about it, because I'll speak to Mike about it for everybody, so that they don't become targets themselves and start getting fake scam messages from Optus and things like that. So speak to them about it to they can get a second opinion as to whether they think an email or a text message is real. It's nothing to be stressed about. It's nothing to over worry about. It's just getting someone to put their eyes over it to make sure that the email that they've got is from at optus.com.au, not xyz.234 optus.net.au. So it's that kind of thing that we need to look out for, and we need to protect the elderly, especially when it comes to these scams, because even us, like people that know about cybersecurity, and we're running through our day and we're just trying to tick off things on our to-do list. Okay, Optus, they've asked me to do this. Okay, I'll do that. And you do it without even looking, and that's when they get you. So just be vigilant and speak to the people in your life that you think might be at risk.
Thanks, Casey. Loss of Justice, stick around for a minute. Wait till we play our ending video. You've been watching episode 168 of Spy Curious with Casey's wisdom about the Optus breach. And we're going out in our usual way. I'll speak to the Loss of Justice in 30 seconds.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
That's how everything ends on Friday afternoon in the investigation industry in Australia. Last week, Loss of Justice, I told you about something. Rose Training in the Federal Court of Australia were fined $23,000 plus $46,000 in court costs for issuing 8 qualifications that were beyond their scope of registration as a registered training organisation. If you own a loss adjusting firm, get in touch with me, 04 07 593 881. That's it from Spy Curious this week. I'm Mike Evans, and that was Casey Pine.
I think you're asking the episode number. I never remember.
Next week for self-defence in government investigation, each vegetable situations, and the first meeting of AIRLAP, where I'm introducing you to that new target that we've got for our industry association. Thanks for watching, people. See you.
See you next week.